The 2017 anime Sakura Quest has been praised by those who watched it, but admittedly, I only got to it fairly recently. A slice-of-life series about a bunch of 20-somethings working at a small-town tourism board, not only does it stand out for having adult protagonists and side characters diverse in age and gender, its story of failed dreams and working at the last place you wanted to end up has been praised as a modern resonating mood for young adults everywhere. It's also got a lot to say about dealing with the hopeless odds we're so often handed these days and finding a way to still fulfill the purpose you've been searching for. This series opens with our main character, Yoshino, shuffling through Tokyo as a recent graduate. She's finally left small-town boredom for a big city where you can do anything, but she's found herself packing her days with job interviews and counting her dwindling savings as she constantly gets turned down. Finally, she gets a job offer from a modeling agency that wants her to go out to the boonies to a town called Manoyama for a Queen for a Day promotion that reminds her of a fuzzy childhood memory. So while she's no fan of rural life, she accepts, only to find that she was only hired due to a clerical error, and Queen for a Day is actually Queen for a year. Despite her early attempts to get out of the job, Yoshino finds she's stuck with it and has to spend the year working with the tourism board to try and save this dying town. Trapped in the last place she wants to be, Queen Yoshino nonetheless makes some friends who get hired on as her ministers, and while they're willing to help, Manoyama doesn't seem to be the savior any of them are looking for. Shiori loves the town, but most of the peers she grew up with have moved away for greener pastures, or in this case, cities far from any pasture, so she works with the tourism board despite knowing it's futile to try and save her town. Sanae is a freelance web designer whose attempts to move to Manoyama to get away from it all has led to nothing but bug infestations and a diet of instant noodles as her work dries up. Maki moved out to chase her dreams as an actress, but had to give up and move back when she never made it big. And Jijiko still lives at home with a family that doesn't understand her, awkward from growing up ostracized for her low social skills and special interest in cryptids. Even so, the Queen and her ministers work together to do the best they can, and they pull out some successes. But the show hits you with reality again, because for every success they have, they also have one or two failures. Sometimes it's because the challenge they're facing was rigged. Sometimes it's due to their own flaws, such as Yoshino being overly ambitious, or Maki feeling discouraged from trying anything she's good at. Sometimes it's due to the infighting between people like Karota, who think change is the only way to survive, and the traditionalist townspeople who know their way of life is dying but don't want to lose the town's identity. And sometimes it's because outsiders look at the town doing its best to stay alive and see something to exploit. What Yoshino and company do with these problems and how they don't always win says that not every hurdle thrown at you is something you're going to overcome in the way you hope. At the same time, even failure doesn't mean your life is ruined forever. Not even in the way we're dealing with now, where many of us are trapped at home with even less than we had before for who knows how long. After all, each one of these characters has already failed in their own personal ambitions. Yoshino to get a job in the city, Sanae to make a difference in her office job, Maki to be a successful actress, Jijiko to make connections while staying true to herself, and Shiori to keep living happily the way she always has. Had they not failed before, none of them would be at the Manoyama Tourism Board in the first place, and the fact that they all are is what allows them to, after some stumbles, eventually get the town standing on its own feet. And the way they do that is important, because no matter what the source of each failure was, they all boil down to the same reason Karota's ambitions failed all those years ago, playing to fleeting trends and popular faces rather than the strengths and character of the town. While Oribe is definitely just as unpleasant as he is, her gripes with Karota are legitimate. From the Chupacabra mascot chasing a cryptid fad to outsourcing rather than using local ingredients, he constantly throws away what makes Manoyama stand out, and thus his attempts to make the town popular by following trends just make it seem generic. Yoshino and company have the same problem early on and even later in the series. But when they fail, they ask why, and then focus on what will work better for the town, what they actually need, what Manoyama can do that no one else can, and what they can do that no one else can. That reinforces the story's deep-rooted theme of millennial malaise. Like Yoshino, we're shut out of all but temporary jobs we may not actually want. Like Sanae, even if we do get into our field of choice, we can't advance and we're viewed as replaceable. Like Ririko, we're often forced to choose between a socially acceptable exterior or being ourselves but unable to connect with others. Like Shiori, even if we are happy where we are, people drift off and things start to crumble around us while they tell us that nothing is forever. And like Maki, we start to wonder if following our dreams was just a waste of time. AniTube isn't a career for me like it is for so many others. As Saitama would say, I just do it for fun. That awards me more freedom to talk about older or more obscure anime, but even then I feel tempted to talk about current shows and feed the need for the now that has overwhelmingly taken over the internet as a whole. As of this writing, the only 2 videos I've done that broke 10,000 views were on popular series released while those series were airing. But the reason I made those was because I wanted to talk about them and I wanted to say things no one else was saying. I like Hiroaka as much as anyone, but anything I would make a video about it on has already been done by 10 other people who all did it better. Watching Sakura Quest through that lens is kind of comforting, because it tells us what we've all been told before, that you really do succeed best by being yourself. But it brings in a dose of realism because we know by now that it's not that simple, that being yourself can shut as many doors as it opens. Sakura Quest acknowledges that life sucks a lot of the time and that, in this day and age, a lot of what our parents told us was wrong, but we have to find our own solutions and do what we can do best. Much like the series itself does, by having a cast of adults instead of teenagers and grounding their Save Our Small Town story in reality, which makes the show different and memorable to those who watched it. Since a lot of us here are suddenly in a position to watch through our backlogs, I do strongly recommend checking out Sakura Quest on Funimation or Physical. But I also urge you to watch what you want and haven't gotten around to, since the odds are your to-watch list is already in the hundreds. Who knows? Maybe you'll find something that speaks to you. This is Secret Identity Studio, and how do you expect me to choose a best girl out of all of these great characters? Come on. Okay, fine, it's Maki. Maki is best girl.